Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. We're going to return to anatomy, right? So periodically we try to come back here to anatomy. Anatomy is always a hot subject on how to draw. And I would therefore preface this, as I always do with anatomy videos, is that anatomy is not the first thing you should go and learn how to draw either. Obviously, in my world, I believe that force is the first thing you should learn how to draw, because anatomy is just anatomy, just objects, right? So it doesn't make sense to say, hey, I want to learn how to draw anatomy before you learn how to draw, right? So learn how to draw first, then go and learn how to draw the subjects that you like to draw. If it's anatomy in people, or if it's cars, or if it's architecture and buildings, right? But first comes the act of drawing itself, right? So before we get into our whole thing today, let's say a quick hello here to Mrityunjay. How's it going?
Hey Mike, it's going good. I'm ready to draw some good muscles.
Yeah, muscles and backs and scapula, right? Lots of fun. Yeah. No Swanley today again. He's out. He will be back with us next week. So I think he's at another wedding, if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, too many friends. So let's see, let's head back. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. Let me head back over here to Photoshop. So before we get into it, there's a couple of, well, there's a few things, like I said, I want to sort of overview here. Let's see, brush. So number one, again, drawing first, right? The art of learning how to draw, right? Drawing first. I should say learn drawing, right? Learn drawing first, not anatomy. I can't tell you how many times I have new students come in that want to be, that are menteed or premium members. They send in their work and they send me drawings of anatomy, but they could barely draw, right? But yet they're drawing anatomy, right? So it doesn't really make much sense. So learn to draw, learn how to draw first. The second thing I want to bring to attention here is just how anatomy works, how muscles work, right? So obviously, like, the underlying structure of our human bodies are our skeleton, right? So our skeleton is like it's like a framework, just like a frame on a house, right? Framing on a house. And then we finally have our muscles, right? And our muscles very simply work through contraction. And typically this contraction happens over or across, well, we'll put across here, over or across a joint. And that's what allows us to move, because the shortening of a muscle, its contraction, moves bones closer together typically, right? So a great example of this always is the arm, right? So let's say this is your arm, this is your humerus, right? The way I always remember this is because at your elbow, you have that area of the funny bone. So I always remember humor and funny, just simple way of remembering the name of this bone. And then you have obviously the two bones in your forearm, right? And then your wrist is over here. And then you might have your bicep here, right? Well, hopefully you have your bicep here, right? And the bicep goes from the top of the bone and then goes down over this joint, hooks up to the bones in the lower arm, right? So by contracting, right, by this muscle becoming shorter, suddenly, we have our upper arm again, our humerus, right? It's going to pull the arm up, right? Because this muscle has gotten shorter. And when it gets shorter, it gets more bulgy, right? Create a bulge like this, right? So it shortens up, creates a bulge, and it lifts the arm. So this is how it works, right? So if you do look at an anatomy book, even if it's sort of a medical book, and you're looking at like the face and you're like, oh my God, look at all the muscles on the face, right? Just keep in mind the simplicity of looking at where it's called origins and insertion points, right, are the 2 points. So here would be like the origin of the bicep, and down here would be the insertion. You want to look at the ends of the muscle, and say, you know what, if this thing shortened, what would happen, right? And that starts very quickly helping you understand like the locomotive process of the human body based on how the muscles work, right? So pretty straightforward, actually, right? Pretty simple. And to me, what I love about this is you just start thinking about the world we live in and start recognizing all the different muscles and their types and the different kinds of joints, like skeletally, because there's different kinds of joints in the body too. Like we're going to talk about the ball and socket joint, for instance, today, and how that's led to us as human beings creating machines, you know, out in the real world that are mimicked, you know, or been designed based off of how we work as human beings, right? So pretty damn cool, right? Especially in like construction, you see a lot of this, right? It's like how tools function because of how the human body functions. So once you understand the human body, you'll start recognizing this kind of stuff out in the real world. So that's like the main 3 things I want you to be aware of. You know, we want to make sure we learn how to draw first, not draw anatomy, learn how to draw, right? And then the anatomy. Obviously, we have the skeleton is our framework, right? It's the stiffer part of our body. And then you got these muscles that attach from origins and insertion points. And it's their contraction that move these bones. The ends of muscles, by the way, on a side note, so this is a muscle. The ends of the muscles are called tendons, right? This is your tendon. Right, so if you hear me mention that today, it's about the ends of the muscle. That the tendon is what inserts into the bone, right? Okay, let's see. Any questions so far? No, looks like no questions in the chat. Obviously, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. And again, if you like what's been going on here on our channel, please hit the subscribe button. And if you hit the bell, then you'll get notified, right, about our sessions every week. We are planning to start ramping up other videos, so you might be seeing some new stuff coming up in August and September. So that'll also notify you of when those things get posted. Okay. All right, like I said, no questions. So today, you know, we want to talk about drawing the back, right? But what I have found in my years of teaching, and just for myself, how I had to learn how to draw the back was a big deal to me, right? So drawing the back, and it's a big deal because it's so darn complicated, right? There's just like so much stuff. I think as I put in the description, to me, the back is almost like, when I draw the back, I almost kind of picture like a cliff like this. And I kind of picture myself like standing on this cliff edge, like looking down, right? And seeing like a bunch of rocks like this, right? So here's all these rocks and just seeing all this like water, you know, here's the edge of the cliffs, right? It's like that. And I just kind of picture all this water like rippling around all these bumps. It's like, I don't know what I'm looking at. This seems so complicated. Things are moving around the back. Like, I just don't understand how it works. And I think what I found was if I can just identify the darn scapula, then everything else starts to fall into place. It's so important as an anchor, right? So today we're going to focus more primarily on the scapula, right? And the scapula is an anchor, right? It's an anchor for the back. So if we can find this guy, right, which is what Mrityunjay and I are going to help you with today, you know what, then everything else, all the other muscles start to fall into place, right? Okay, so how do we do that? First of all, let's talk about this, right? I talked about joints. You'll see I laid this over this purposely like this. I want you to be aware of the bones, right? So we're going to start with the bones. I'm going to cover the bone part of this. And the scapula itself has a ball and socket joint in it, right? It's got a socket that the ball of the top of the humerus bone, so this is the humerus, the screw down here, and this would be the scapula, and it fits into it, right? So which means it has, you know, a vast range of motion, right? An extremely vast range of motion. Obviously, you know, like I can only put my arm so high, I can't go through my head with it. Like at some point that range finally stops, but it's all on the one, at least the half or hemisphere of the scapula of that ball and socket is where I have my movement, right? So, and I also like to, you know, I love metaphors, as you guys probably know by now. So, you know, I used to always just think like, well, what is the darn shape of the scapula? You know, is it, you know, does it look like a saxophone? No, right? Like just way too complicated of a shape. Does it look like a guitar? No, it doesn't look like this either. This could be a figure, right? You can see it almost looks like an hourglass figure. It even to me almost looks like a smiley face and a teardrop coming out of a centaur-like character, right? One big giant eyeball with a teardrop hanging out of it and a kind of half grin, but not a scapula, right? So last but not least, the thing I teach students is the scapula is kind of like a piano, like a grand piano, right? Is this kind of shape. So if I brought that back over to my drawing, all right, here's my drawing. I would say that, you know, I could take the scapula, I could take my piano and start to fit this in here and say, you know what, the scapula is kind of like this, right? It's a little more like this, and I can rotate it, all right? And I want to flip it actually. Let's see, edit, transform. That's so strange. Why does it keep doing that? Transform, flip horizontal. Here, there we go, that's better. And rotate it. And the scapula is something like this, you see? So when I draw the scapula, I think about having more of like a 90-degree corner with this very, very subtle indent on the side, almost like a little bit of an S action going on there. And that sets up the overarching shape, right? So if I take this, all right, let's bring this over here, like so. You know, when I draw the scapula, I think of it like this. Like there's a scapula, right? Now, this is a little bit of a cheat, right? Let's get into the bone itself here. The scapula, by the way, is extremely complicated and such a darn, you know, darn cool, cool bone, right, in the body. I would say the pelvis, right, and the scapula are some of the most interesting in the entire figure outside of the skull. And it's made of obviously multiple bones that have been like fused together. When I think about the scapula, I primarily think about this shape, but the scapula actually goes a little bit more like this. So there's this, let's call this section number 2, and this is section 1, right? We don't really see number 2 very often because the trapezius hooks up over here along this ridge. This is called the spine of the scapula, by the way, not to be confused with the vertebrae spine that we have going down the middle of our back, right? And that red line represents where the trapezius goes. So the trapezius hides all of this, right? So this whole top half here, or not half, this top sliver, I should say, gets hidden, right? We never see this, right? This is unseen, it's invisible, it's buried. But we do have this scapula spine, and the scapula spine kind of goes like this and then goes down, kind of tapers off. So if this was like a shadow, right, it would be like this and then it would kind of disappear. And it has like a little bit of a ridge here, but not very much, something like that, right? Now, so what are some things we can take from this? Well, one thing that's really important, really, really important that I use when I'm teaching this and that I use when I draw is I try to be aware of this angle, very, very important angle, all right? Number 1. And this line here, the edge of the scapula, so that's the spine again, by the way, number 1. The edge of the scapula is almost 90 degrees from line number 1. So let's call this number 2, not this one, but this is now our line number 2. Almost 90, it's a little bit more obtuse, meaning it's a little wider than that. If this is 90 degrees, it's probably a little bit more like this, but I just cheat this. It's so close to 90 that it's just so simple to say, you know what, this is about 90 degrees. It's going to help you find it and identify it in the back. Okay. So I try to find this. I think if I can find that, then all of a sudden everything starts to fall into place like very quickly. So my point to this is, and what I really want you to leave with today is the shape of the scapula, identifying the scapula in your reference, right? And then Mrityunjay is going to kick in with what are the muscles on that bone, right? And trying to identify those as well. But step number one is finding this darn scapula. If we could find, like I said, the bone in the back, then everything else will fall into place. Now the scapula itself, before we go do that, we're going to look at some photographs in a moment, and I'll talk a little bit more about finding. The scapula itself, as I was saying, is pretty complicated, and it can go in perspective. So let's say here's a perspective plane just to help us identify, right? And then, like I said, there's a top half that we don't see that much, and this bottom half. And let's turn our plane into piano, right? So it's like this. And what's really cool here is this part has a little bit of an arc in it. There's a muscle that I don't normally teach even. It's called the supraspinatus. Supraspinatus, supraspinatus. And that muscle actually goes through here because up here, the spine of the scapula, right? Here, let me tone this in. The spine of the scapula, this guy right here, right? That guy goes like this and becomes like a little arm, right? It's like this. And underneath here goes that muscle, right? So let's grab red. There's a muscle that goes from here, hooks up down here, and goes all the way over to the ball and socket joint we were talking about, right? Which is right here. Okay, so this is like a little bowl in here. And then the humerus bone sits in here like this. Okay, right? So this little arm comes over the top like so. And that muscle actually goes underneath that little bridge, right? And hooks up to the humerus, okay? What's important to understand here in this corner is how the scapula hooks up here with this arm. I believe it's called the acromion, if I remember correctly. Acromion.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't usually focus on the name of this, but it's been a while, but acromion. And the clavicle, right, from the front of your body, the clavicle comes around from the front and hooks up to the side of the acromion. So this is your clavicle over here, right? It comes around the front. So if we drew the front view, just over here, I'll draw like a 3/4 down shot, right? So here is your sternum. Here's your clavicle. It kind of goes like this, and it goes like this. And then you got the acromion here, like this, right? And then that's going to sweep its way down into the scapula. And over here, we're looking at now the back of the scapula, right? So this here, the sketch is the back of this drawing. It would go around the back here, right? So that's an important thing to be aware of. And that's a very important thing in human beings, by the way, too. One of the things I learned when I was drawing the animal drawing book is that animals don't have this connection. Their rib cage, right? Because, notice if we follow this path, let's just use another color here. If we follow this idea that these guys connect here, well, it's like the acromion connects to the collarbone. The collarbone connects to the sternum. The sternum is part of the rib cage, right? Rib cage hooks up to the sternum. All of a sudden, wait a minute, that means our shoulder blade and our arm, because the arm is connected over here to the scapula, is attached to the rib cage, right? It's like the knee bone's connected to the, right? Like one thing connects to another, which, to be really simple and short about it, means our arms are actually connected to our rib cages, right? Because of the connection of the scapula, connected to the clavicle, connected to the rib cage and the sternum, right? Mammals, animals, four-legged animals, that connection doesn't happen, right? So the scapula actually has the ability to slide around the rib cage way more than it does on a human being. Okay, very, very, very important distinction, right? So this is like the main thing to be aware of. There's this other little bone over here that sticks out the front of the scapula that kind of helps create this, like little world, like this little shell area. There's lots of ligaments, what I call ligotape. There's lots of ligaments. They're like tape that kind of wrap around this nest that the humerus, the top of the humerus bone sits in. That's what helps your bones sit and stay locked into the ball and socket joint, right? Otherwise it would just pop out. And sometimes people do pop that shoulder out. You see in movies all the time, like, oh my God, they pop their shoulder out, and you'll see somebody like smash their shoulder and try to like knock it back into place, right? I've done that with my finger and pulled it back, my finger, and tried to, I dislocated a joint. I remember in one of my hands playing volleyball, and I just kind of snapped it back myself, and that hurt. I can just imagine how much pain there would be to push your shoulder, right? To push your humerus bone back into your ball and socket joint, right? So, so that's like the basics of it, right? We have this bone, like I said, the supraspinatus. I'm not going to go too much into muscles, so Mrityunjay could talk about that, but you do have a muscle that sits over here, which we never get to see because, again, your trapezius is sitting over here, and it goes around this corner actually like this. So it hides this whole top portion. All of this gets hidden, right? This whole top portion, supraspinatus and the scapula, is hidden by the traps like so, okay? Let's see, any questions? Ray Bustos Anatomy segment where he speaks on 20-minute studies. Yeah, I've met Ray Bustos many times. I think he may have even taught a class at my school on anatomy. Wait, my scapula is the scapular grand piano. If you pop the lid of the piano, maybe that would mimic the spine. Yes, that's true. Good point, AM. Yeah, because the piano has that separation of the keys to the strings of the keys, right? So, and it's almost similar in proportion, that breakdown. Redacted says, Mike, what should I buy? A small skeletal figure or the French? When it comes to anatomy and sculptures, I really like the Andrew Carse sculpture. I forget the name of the website that's on, but if you look up Andrew Carse, you spell Carse, C-A-R-S-E, Andrew. That's the one that I have that I bought for my school years ago when he just came out with that sculpture. And almost every artist has this, I have to say. And a lot of the studios have it too, but that's probably one of my favorite sort of anatomy sculptures. Okay, so there's the bone, right? The bone of the scapula. Very intricate if you think about it, right? It has this channel at the top, it's got this little arm, it's got this thing called the spine. It has somewhat of a thick edge, by the way, over here as well, right along the side, right? Very intricate, three-dimensional piece. When I tried to really understand it, I was drawing the anatomy book. I happened to be in London, I remember, during the time, and you'll see in my anatomy book, there are sketches, like pen sketches of the scapula that I did from a human skeleton that they actually had there. And then also, for some reason, I can't remember if it was me or my wife. I remember one of us went to the doctor and he happened to have a sculpture of the scapula in his office, this doctor. And I remember looking at that and taking pictures of it as well. Anyway, so we've got the scapula, right? So let's go to some photographs here and see if we can identify this, right? I think this is the trickiest part right here. It's like, okay, now we have this information that I just shared with you. Great, can we use it, right? Can we actually use it? So let's see if we can actually find it in here. So I think that probably the best way to identify this is these markers of the spine. And I think the tips of the spine are the easiest way to find it. So I used to say that if this is the scapula, and this is even on my website, I used to try to go for this first, but I've been changing that of late. I think this might actually be easier to go after first, right, over here. Why is that? Well, because one area that's very clear to see the scapula is you got this bump over here, right, that sits in that little nest of the deltoid. You can see here, Trinda, our model, has his arm raised. So right here and right here is this tip of the scapula where, remember, the spine went up and creates this little arm, that little bump, right? So we can find that. So I would say this would be our number one indicator, right? Like, let me find the scapula. So it's up there. Now, number two is a little tricky. Going to be a little harder here on the right, of course, with Trinda, because he has this tattoo, of course, like right over the scapula, but we'll figure it out. So number 2 is to find the other corner, right? Why is that number 2? Because what we're trying to find is that spine. If I can find this line, then that will help me find this line, you see? So it's like I'm going to number 1, I want this point. Number 2, I want that point, and that'll lead me to connecting the dots, basically, right? So where number 2 is, point number 2 is just typically like this little notch, this little hole right in here, right, to find in the body. Now, when somebody's not muscular like Trinda, it'll be the opposite. You'll actually start to see the ridge of the spine of the scapula and find the line. When someone's more muscular, your muscles are thicker and bigger and stick out more than the bone does, right? So you can see here, his muscle is rounder. We're actually looking for the negative, like we're looking for the trenches, right? Because the bone doesn't inflate or anything, but the muscles do. So I'm looking for the negative space in a sense, right? Where it goes down. Where are the valleys, right? Think about this as ground, right? These are like hills and valleys. So I'm trying to find the valley. So I look for this notch, right? I can typically find this like little indent, right? So here, that means now I can connect the dots, right? I go, ah, there is a trench right here. Look at that. There's a trench there. I can connect the dots. Bam, there's my spine. Spine of the scapula. Again, not this spine. That's not what we're talking about. Spine of the scapula, right? And then I said, this is typically about 90 degrees. It's a little more obtuse, but in general, very close to 90. So lots of students will be able to find this, and then they'll do this. It's like, whoa, that's not right. That's way too obtuse, meaning this is too wide open. X, this angle, way too wide open. We need it around 90, right? So if I look, you can see it's kind of flattish in here. It's like, this is actually a little bit more like this, right? So now we have this to this, right? Buried in here, okay? So I want to find that angle, right? And then on the other side, I could do that. I can go from here to here. It's going to be like this. This arm is raised more. You can see the angle is much stronger, right? So it's going to be more like that. See, this one is lower. So that's another thing to be aware of with the scapula, by the way, is as the arm rises, the scapula can turn, right? Keep that in mind. There's flexibility, right? As your arm lifts up, your collarbone is lifting up, your scapula is lifting up. All that stuff has the ability to move. The reason for that, by the way, is where the collarbone hooks up here. So here's the collarbone again, collarbone. This, here's the sternum right down here. Here's the other collarbone. This little bone over here, by the way, is called the manubrium. Nobody usually knows this, but it's called the manubrium. It's the top of your sternum, right? So here's the sternum, right? There's flexibility here, okay? This bone has the ability to raise and lower, and that helps your arm move up, right? So you're raising and lowering off of the collarbone. You're moving the whole scapula along the surface of your back, and the whole thing is sliding upward, okay? So this whole thing slides up. So you can see here the angle here. I'll pick another color just to emphasize. The angle here is different than the angle here, right? Much greater, right? So this is rising up. You know, if we look at vertical next to this, you can see what this angle is versus vertical here and what this angle is, right? So this is coming up much higher, okay? So be aware of that sliding. So if I can find that, man, all of a sudden, everything else starts to fit into place, right? All of a sudden, I could figure out where the traps are, the lats are, all the muscles that go onto the scapula, the deltoid, which is all stuff we're going to start hearing from Mrityunjay on. If I could find that, then all this stuff starts to fall into place, right? So my recommendation to you when handling drawing the back is you got to find the scapula. You got to go after number 1. I think this is the easiest thing to find because it's at the tip of the shoulder, right in that hole over there. And this one's probably the trickiest, if anything, is getting accustomed to trying to find this little corner right here, right? Because as soon as you can find that, that'll give you this line. As soon as you find that line, that'll help you find this line, right? That means that the piano in here is kind of like this, right? And the piano here is kind of like this, you see, like so. And then that lets me start filling in all the muscles, okay? See if there's any other questions. When the bone pops, it's actually small air pockets escaping. Yeah, that's like when you crack your knuckles. The triangle of osculation. Osculation is helpful to me in looking for the bottom part of it. Okay, you guys are way more technical than I am. I'm just happy if we could find it. Okay. All right, so I'm going to hand this over to Mrityunjay. Let me get you as a co-host set up in here. And Mrityunjay is going to start talking to us about the anatomy of the back, and then also the anatomy, of course, of the scapula itself. So all yours, Mrityunjay, when you're ready.
All right. Thank you for doing that. Just making my life easier.
Of course, anytime. That's my job.
Yeah, doing all the
Make people's lives easier. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's fun. So here it is. Here is a more illustrated, more clear example of what Mike just said. I did this in a mentorship, I remember. So here's a muscle that Mike was talking about is supraspinatus. Okay, you see, like this is the spine that we're looking at here. This white part here, right? This is the spine that you see in here, and see how the muscle is actually going in there and attaching. You see like that little red part in here. Okay, that's attaching to the humerus. Okay. So that's the first muscle, and obviously you don't have to worry about that too much because that is again hidden by the trapezius muscle. Okay? We just call it traps, okay, in short form. Okay, so supraspinatus, then we got the infraspinatus. Okay, now see, like it is a big, it got striations. The muscle got striations in there. It's actually just like this one big muscle, okay, right here. So. And the thing is, you just want to know that these are connected to the humerus itself. Okay, so imagine if they're not connected to humerus and just connected by the edge of the scapula, that won't make too much of sense. Because when you raise your arm, right, you feel that stretch of those muscles. Okay, and that actually, because these muscles are on the scapula, they actually helps the scapula to slide off. Okay, like on the rib cage, basically. There's actually another muscle called serratus, okay, which you can see in the front as well. Like you basically see only can see that in the front, by the way. So this is the rib cage, okay, a simple form of rib cage, and the serratus is actually something like that. So it's got like 9 units in there, like 9 small muscles. And see like where it's going, right? It's going to the back. Okay, it's like wrapping around, and scapula is placed on top of it. So you see like the scapula kind of slides off of that. Like it doesn't create it's not like touched by the rib cage, so it's like not creating a friction. Okay, don't think like that. So there's actually serratus on the back, and then the scapula is placed on top of it. Okay. And then the scapula slides off of that muscle. Anyway, so that was just an FYI fact, So right here, so there's the infraspinatus muscle. Okay. Again, where it's coming from. Okay, so where it inserts, it basically inserts onto the humerus part, but where it's coming from. So we had a basic scapular drawing here. I don't always draw it like this. You can have like a triangle, and I kind of agree with Mike here. Again, you just call it like region 2. It's kind of like a like an extra piece in there. And then I kind of cut off this part here because there's a socket, okay, for the scapula to kick. For the humerus to kick in, and then there's the bone right there. So where it's coming from. So here's the spine, just kind of like this, and then you see that edge in there. Okay, that's where all the like muscles kind of originates and inserts into the humerus. Okay, so this place here that remains empty. Now basically when I'll tell you about traps, you'll see like how that space is being used, and and so on. So basically you see like this white space here, that is all just the bone part. Okay? So we have the infraspinatus. And then there's this muscle called teres minor. I don't know like what these people have been thinking while naming these muscles, because what they're smoking. But in some places, like naming is super cool. Okay, just like the sternocleidomastoid, where it explains you everything. but at some places like naming is super bad. So I don't know, maybe this muscle is doing something else, but there's this muscle called teres minor muscle, right here, that yellow one. Now because it's small, okay, so you can say that, oh, right below the infraspinatus is the teres minor muscle. Okay, that again comes from the spine here, attaches to the humerus. Now with the teres major muscle, you would see a little bit different story. You see like there's a gap in the middle. Just wanna like do it with this color here. So you see like there's a gap, okay, this negative space here, that's a gap. And the teres major muscle attaches to the front of the humerus, okay? Like, and you see like how it's like attaching to the lower state of it versus like all these muscles, the infraspinatus and the teres minor attaching to the top part of it. So it's attaching to the front of the humerus, and that's why, and it's actually creating a negative space here. You see, kind of like that. All of these things are not visible here, but again, these are like little subtleties that's gonna like bring in more clarity and more believability, to your drawings when you're actually drawing them. Okay, right there. So those are the 4 muscles of the scapula. There's actually one more, to just complete like the major muscles of just the scapula, and that is rhomboids. Okay, so rhomboids is like this. You see like what a rhomboid is? You take a rectangle, okay, and you offset it a little bit, so just like distorting it a little bit towards like one side. If you want to make this rectangle a rhomboid, what you would do is slant that like that. And this shape is basically called a rhomboid. And look at the muscle right there, and that exactly looks like that. So this muscle right like that is the rhomboid muscle. Okay. Now again, you imagine like because the scapula has so much to do, we have this like great range of motion with our arms, and this muscle actually helps the scapula connected to the spine. Okay, even when it's like super high up like this. So the muscle is just keeping the scapula connecting on the spine. Imagine if it's not there, like your scapula could just, yeah, it won't have that kind of strength in there. So that kind of completes the major muscles of the scapula. And oh, by the way, the deltoid actually comes from here. So you see like why now, yeah, I mean, the deltoid kind of comes from here. So you basically, what you did is take the spine. Okay, so here's the spine. You take the half of it. Okay, so here's the half. And from here, the deltoid originates. Now the deltoid has 3 parts basically. Okay, there's a front part, there's this medial part, and there's a rear part of it. So here's where the rear part comes in, okay, and attaches to the deltoid tuberosity on humerus. Now deltoid tuberosity is nothing but just the place where the deltoid attaches and on the humerus, and that's it. So you basically have this humerus bone in here, it's kind of like that. And in the middle right here, in the upper thirds, you'll find the deltoid tuberosity where the deltoid attaches. Okay, so that's the rear part. Okay, rear part of the scapula. Right here, and you see like that gap that is created right here. This gap here, that's also covered by the scapula. Okay, so like it's deep inside. Don't have to worry about it. Okay, so right here. So scapula, the deltoid comes up right from here. And then if I want to draw the traps, this color not visible, okay. Want to draw the traps, it would be somewhere around this plane here. Like that. And see, now that white part, that bone part is all just like ligaments, okay? Because when a muscle connects to a bone, it connects through tendons, okay? So when the muscle actually grows, the tendons don't bulge up like too much, okay? The muscle actually bulges up. And that's why it's like creating these crevices like deep inside, okay? Right there. All right. So with that information, hope you don't find it like too much, okay? It's just like it's not too much actually. And here's I'm gonna tell you like simple ways to just like find it really, really quickly. Here's a diagram that I just did really, really quickly when Mike was explaining the shoulder girdle. So this is how the spine is attached to the clavicle. Okay, this is the collarbone or clavicle. And then look here, that's a scapula, and see how that's connected right here. Here's the humerus. Simple, 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 simple. All right. Now we see here's one photograph. I actually kind of did this diagram already, just to show you. I'm gonna show you here like how we can find it. Let's see. Here's a little bit difficult. Should not have taken this one. Let's see. Here's one. Okay, you're gonna find it on this one. Although she's not like muscular or something like that, but you can really see the two clear scapulas in here. Okay, and that's like that's something you want to start off with. Okay, you see like what's happening. You see that bumping right there. That's the first point again. You have the scapula like this, and this is the first thing that we're going for is a socket. The second thing is the spine. So spine is like this. So this point here, that's the second part that we're going for. And again, that gives you the line just like Mike explained. And then I think just most of the things are done in finding scapula. You see what's happening? Right there, you see that bump. Okay, you connect the line again. And there we go with the 90-degree angle. And look, we have the scapula right like here. Again, very, very easy. And I can basically just clearly see that. Again, we don't see the socket in there or the bump in there. You really see what's happening. That's his scapula. Yeah, right here, right here, right here. Okay. You see what's happening? It's yeah, it's just like very, very easy. Now, coming to the muscles, some of the muscles that I just want to show you right here. Once you find that, how you're just gonna quickly be able to draw the muscles on top of it. All the muscles that we talked about. Don't have to like take any extra efforts in drawing the muscles of the scapula because these are literally onto that, literally placed onto the scapula. The only because they're not affecting the silhouette and so on, and most of that is hidden, under the traps and the lats muscle. So only like a fraction of them is visible. Okay. So here, the first thing I just want to draw traps. Now, traps are a big, like we actually did a stream onto the trap. So, you can see that as a prequel to this stream here because they are super complicated, to be honest. And then you can just go in, watch that stream and then come back to this one and just follow up with the scapula muscles. Okay. I'm going to quickly cover, I'm just going to quickly draw the scapula here. I'm sorry, the traps here. It's kind of like here. It's attached to the spine like this. And there's this the tendon that's happening in here. Like that. So here's a trap, and here's the traps again. Just going on like that. Okay. Simple. Traps actually resemble a kite-like shape. Okay. And I can bring you some of the notes from there if I do have it. Let's see. I still have the trap notes. Actually, I did cover that in stream. So just for the sake of time, I'm like doing this quickly here. Okay. Now, so the supraspinatus, that's right here. You see that is covered. Okay, don't have to take any worries about. I don't have to worry about it. Now we have the infraspinatus. So we're gonna do it like that. Actually, it's gonna be the other direction, right? Like that. So that's the infraspinatus. And then we have the teres minor muscle, which is connected by like this. And then we have the teres major. Now you remember, like it's attached to the bottom of the humerus. So if this is the humerus right here, and all the infraspinatus and supraspinatus are connected here, the teres major is attached here, okay, right here. So again, when you raise your arm, it's gonna be right here. Okay. Again, remember that small gap that it's created, like that. And there we go. We have the muscles of the scapula right there. Now, I know it's kind of looking a little bit too weird because we don't have the deltoid right on top. Okay? You imagine like you remove your deltoids off and then you've seen these muscles connected. And that's how they can look. Okay. So once we're done with that, we just have to let me take a soft brush here. Just have to like put the deltoid in. Okay, so the half of the spine, right? That's where the deltoid kind of comes in. And voila, right there, you see, there's a deltoid. Okay. Now it makes sense. Okay, see like all the scapular muscles in there. The rhomboid would be right here. Okay? So you see, you remember the rhomboid, I talked about that. It's like attached. Now, I know it kind of looks big, but it does stretch. Okay, when you raise your arms like that, right? It does stretch there. So there's the rhomboids. Now we might cover lats in future stream, but the lats are actually gonna like do this kind of stuff to the scapula, like that, like this. So you see that this triangle thing in here, that's the rhomboids, like these are the lat muscles right here. Okay. And this is the trap that I was like talking about. So let's yeah, so there we go. These are the simple ones. Okay, let's try to do already this one here really quick. Again, starting off with the traps, right? It's coming from the neck. It's attaching to the spine right here. Okay, so there goes the traps of this side. Here goes the trap of this side. I'm like, yeah, I should be doing this, I guess. His neck is twisting, okay? So really have to like make sure that this is happening. Yes. Okay, so there we go. The traps are kind of like that now. Okay, so we fix a sketch really quick. Now here's the traps. Okay, you see, like I'm actually changing. These are the tendons, by the way. There's a little overlap that happens within the traps, and this overlap happened exactly at the second landmark, that we talked about. So this is the first landmark that we talked about. This is the second landmark, and this overlap in the traps happened exactly at that second landmark. Okay. Right here. So there goes the traps. It has a diamond shape, by the way. I forget to talk about that in the first sketch. So here's the diamond shape that's happening here. Again, just watch that stream, okay, that we did on the traps. Okay, the scapula muscles finally. So again, see the infraspinatus, sorry, the supraspinatus is hidden. We got the infraspinatus muscle, right? That's attached right here. We have the teres minor muscle that's attached here. And we got the teres major, okay, which is attached right here. Okay. Again, looks kind of long. It will look a little bit weird, like, oh my God, that's so much stretching, but just think of it logically, right? And then we have half of the spine for the rear end of the deltoid, I can say. Right here. You also see in the photograph, you also see the middle part of the scapula, which patches. It actually should be here. Yes, right there. Attaches right here. Okay, that's what it is. You see like the other side of it. I'm just gonna quickly do it. The infraspinatus, right? The teres minor and the teres major right here, and the deltoid really quick. That's actually the rear end of the deltoid. I'm gonna quickly just cover it. I'm gonna give some time to Mike for because we want to include the screen. Is there any question, Mike, by the way? Just
No, nothing major.
Mhm.
Everything seems to be going fine.
I'm just gonna
Andrew
quickly.
Luna's book on figure drawing also presenting the trapezius and lats as the cape covering. Yeah, just a little conversation about lats and flying squirrels.
Squirrels.
Yeah,
Oh,
flying squirrels.
oh yes,
Yeah.
okay. They resemble the lats, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so there we go. So now you see like a little bit more clearly, and then now they kind of looks like muscles. Okay, okay, and just quickly do this as well. It's kind of fun. I don't think of that to be like too complicated, and that's what our goal here is today. That once you find the scapula, just have to practice like these different groups of muscles. Just have to know like the landmarks and the insertion and the origins, and boom, you're there. It's not just for the back. I also think it's just for the whole body. Just know the landmarks, and you're done. Nothing else. Oh, here's the rhomboid, by the way, as well. Okay, so here's the rhomboids in this triangle. The direction of the striations of the muscle is this direction, right? So this direction, I mean. The rhomboids just keeping it attached. Okay, Mike, you want to do some drawings, I guess, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So,
Yeah, great. Nice and clear. Thank you.
thank you. All right. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much. Let's see, let's get me back to Photoshop here. All right, so let's follow Mrityunjay's ideas there. I'm gonna just kind of start calling out the stuff here, right? So we talked about getting up here to the chromium. I'm gonna bring that spine down again. It gets me to the notch. It's gonna like help me get, the scapula down here. So you can see by getting this to occur, the other muscles to me really start to line up, right? It's like, okay, here's the trapezius, right? Trapezius, as I said, goes along the spine. Here it is, it's making its way down. And here, let's get this guy in here too. Here, I'll do it in blue as I did the other. So it's from here and it's making its way down like this, right? And then in red, we've got the trapezius. It goes around the base of the skull there on the bottom, comes all the way around. It's gonna go here and then make its way down this to the spine. There's a little triangular opening here for the seventh vertebrae right here, right? You'll see there's like this diamond shape. So suddenly, just because I found the scapula, it helped me find the traps, right? Scapula really control the shape of the trapezius and the squashing and stretching of the trapezius, right? The deltoids cover a huge portion of the scapula, right? You can see here how this how the deltoid is wrapping around the tubularness of the arm here. Notice it goes around the triceps, right? So the deltoid's going all the way down around here. It goes around the corner over there, right? Then it comes up over and around here and it hooks its way up to the scapula, almost towards the end of it, actually, right? Not to the very tip, but almost towards it. Here we have the deltoid on the other side. It comes down and around. Lots of times it kind of disappears towards the end. And I think that's because the tendon is longer than the actual muscle is, right? Like the muscle's meat is like sitting here, right? But it actually hooks up to the, it actually does hook up to the scapula, right? Let me see something.
Oh, yes, you're right. I forget to tell that the tendon kind of spans towards the end of it.
Yeah, almost all the way out here, right? So that guy goes like that. And then we have these other muscles that, Mrityunjay was talking about. There's the infraspinatus and then teres minor and major. I got to say, they're generally pretty challenging to actually see on the photography. Like if we look at this picture over here and I zoom in at Trinda's back, and he's pretty ripped, right? What's going on here is the latissimus dorsi, the lats that we were talking about with the flying squirrel action. They, by the way, go over the bottom of the scapula. So here's that piano again, right? It's like this. And the lats go over the bottom, right? So I'm going to draw my own layout here just so we have it. You've got your infraspinatus, which I kind of shape like this, almost like a boomerang, and it goes out to the humerus bones like this. Then you got the teres minor, which is right next to it. So it's like this. And then you got teres major, which goes underneath the infraspinatus. It's a bigger muscle. It's like this. This muscle can get pretty beastly, I have to say. It can get very large, like you can really get some heft out of that muscle. And you'll find that on like bodybuilders and stuff. mountain climbers, right, and get pretty damn large teres majors. So I think it does deserve the term major, that's for sure, versus the minor one. The minor one you barely ever see, right? So, and the lats go over this tip. So this is actually very important. I bring this up because here we have the scapula, right, swinging its way out. So the tip of it is hiding down here somewhere, okay? And the lats are actually right here, okay? It's right there. And this is usually what pushes this out. It gets pushed out because you have a muscle, lats, which are actually pretty thick, going over a bone that's swinging its way out to the silhouette of your body, right? So you'll get this bumping out thing that starts to happen. And it can get bumped out even more than this. His arm isn't all the way up, right? If it was even higher up, you'd see even more of that. So you've got the lat kind of going like this, and that hooks up. I don't want to get too much into lats, but that hooks up into the arm, to the humerus. And I think this is the teres major here. I think what we're dealing with here is this is the teres major, and the infraspinatus is like hiding in here somewhere. And then we've got the deltoid, right? So this is infraspinatus here. I'll make infraspinatus white. I'm trying to get rid of his tattoo here, right? So I'd say it's like this. And it's hooking up underneath the deltoid to the humerus bone, just like Matunje did, right? It's like that, okay? And then let's say we have teres minor is like this. Let's make it this teal color, right? It's kind of hiding out in here, barely doing anything. And then we have the teres major, which much bigger and is really pronouncing part of the edge there, like so. And then we finally have the lats going over the bottom of the scapula, like so. And that makes its way to the spine, and then it also makes its way like all the way down to the lower back, like this. There's like the shape of our flying squirrel muscle, right? Like that. And these guys are all hooked up, you know, to over here, right? We've got this ball and socket joints going on here, and the humerus bone is sitting in here, and all these muscles are, you know, are making their way up here, right? So I like the simplicity of it is I like this idea, this 90-degree angle and these three simple shapes, right? And they all hook up to the bone, right? Like so, a little bit more negative space between major and minor. And to Matunje's point, on the opposite side, you know, if you think about these muscles contracting, they help bring the humerus tightly to the scapula, right? Like help it bring it to the back. And then the rhomboids do that even more, right? So we have the angle on the scapula doing this, and the rhomboids go upward like this. So they help pull the scapula even tighter to the spine, our real vertebrae-like spine, right? So kind of interesting. And last but not least, on a sort of macro level, if you think about the latissimus, again, the latissimus dorsi, which here I have colored in this kind of hot pinkish fuchsia-y color, right? It's like here. Now let's go underneath. It goes under the trapezius, by the way. I'm going to paint it on top, but it goes underneath it. Notice this. This I find actually very intriguing. So all these muscles up here, they all contract. So they pull down. They're helping pull the arm down. Then you got the rhomboids, which are here. They're all pulling in as well. And so is your lats, or are your lats, right? So your lats on either side are also pulling down. So there's all these muscles, right, that hook up from the spine to the scapula, scapula to the humerus, from the spine with the lats to the humerus as well. All this stuff is about get that arm down to the body, right? If your arm's in front of your body, even, it helps you pull back, right? That's like why rowing helps you create your lat muscles, or push-ups also help create lat muscles, right? So it's all about like pulling in, pulling tight to, you know, to your back and to your body, to your spine, right? So to me, this is sort of the big guns right here, right? Is the lats. And then number two would be all the muscles of the scapula. And then number three are the rhomboids, the smaller final set that's hooked up to the scapula as well. And as an overarching action, like I said, contraction equals get me to the spine, right? So arm, get to spine, right? Again, if you want to really work out your back, you end up doing like pull downs, right? Where you put your hands over your head and you pull down, you bring your elbows down to your body. Or if you're doing push-ups, right, and you're pushing them out and straightening them out and pushing like that, you're also working. If you do rows, you're getting that action, right? Because your elbows are out and you're trying to pull them back. So you're compressing like the lats and contracting them. All those actions are about bringing the elbows to the body. And that's how you build these muscles, right? So that's pretty much it for today. I hope that we've given you a little bit more insight and understanding to the complexity of the human back and all of these muscles and some general shape ideas around the scapula and the shapes of the muscles and how this all works. My recommendation would be to start with photographs like we did here, and try to find those markers on the back, try to overlay and see if you can find the scapula. And then once you find the scapula, start working with the muscles around the scapula, right? Trapezius as a great example, and also start working with the muscles on the scapula. You got the traps and the deltoid, and then underneath the deltoid, you have the infraspinatus, teres minor and teres major sitting on top of it. And when it comes to reference, I recommend looking up mountain climbers, really ripped, or you can look up bodybuilders too, but the mountain climbers are even more low body fat, right? You can really see everything, okay? All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you, Mrityunjay, for your awesome drawing skill, of course, and the clarity on all the muscles. We will see you guys next week. Swanley will be back. We have a very exciting subject to share with you next week. And we will see you then. Have a great weekend. Take care, everyone. Take care, Mrityunjay.
Bye, Mike. Take care,
See ya.
everyone.
Bye-bye, guys. All right.